This video was brought to you by our Patreon backers like Paul L. Find out more and support the channel by clicking the link below. Last summer, the issue of migrants crossing the channel burst onto the national consciousness, with figures like Farage forcing the problem onto the front pages. In response, Home Secretary Priti Patel announced a series of initiatives attempting to tackle the issues, including the appointment of the clandestine Channel Threat Commander. Yes, that is a real thing. These efforts seem to have broadly failed though, with last month seeing record numbers crossing the channel. Frustrated, the Home Office have announced a new bill, which introduces a number of changes attempting to stem the flow of migrants. So let's explain the bill and the problems it's attempting to solve right now. In June of this year, over 2,000 people made the perilous journey across the channel to the UK, a record high. And this sounds like a lot of people, and it certainly is, but compared to the number of people who moved to the UK for work or study, and those who sought asylum in the UK, these illegal crossings represent less than 1% of the UK's total migrants. Even still though, you might be wondering why people are travelling all the way to the UK. Well, that's something we actually discussed in a previous video, but it's worth noting that the UK receives far fewer asylum applications than other comparable European countries. And when you look on a global scale, the UK accepts far fewer asylum seekers than many other countries around the world, something we recently discussed on the TLDR Global channel. There's a link to that in the description. But why does the UK accept so few people? Well, the UK's asylum scheme makes it hard for people to seek refuge in the country without physically being in the UK. As such, criminal gangs help people in troubled nations get to the UK in return for huge sums of money. So how does the new bill hope to crack down on those making the crossing? Well, firstly, it targets the criminal gangs helping to smuggle the migrants into the country by introducing a new maximum sentence for smugglers, a life sentence in prison. Secondly, it grants the UK Border Force new powers to redirect vessels it suspects contain migrants, preventing them from ever landing on shore. Thirdly, it contains provisions which allow asylum seekers to be sent elsewhere for processing in offshore centres, keeping them out of the UK. The first of these plans is fairly uncontroversial, but the second two are certainly worth discussing. When it comes to turning away migrant boats, that's a little difficult to actually achieve. International maritime law dictates that migrants found in a country's territorial waters have to be brought to the safety of a local port. And it's worth remembering why these laws are in place. These people aren't making the journey for fun. They've travelled hundreds, if not thousands of miles to find refuge, and as such, international law dictates that they have to be assisted to safety and processed to see whether they have a right to asylum. The UK plans to work around this a bit though, by turning away boats laden with migrants. The major problem here though is that due to the narrowness of the channel, French international waters immediately give way to British waters. Therefore, there's no space to turn anyone away. Once British Coast Guards have jurisdiction, well, it's too late. The migrants are in the UK's territorial waters, and as such, ought to be protected. Therefore, some are questioning the legality of this new strategy, suggesting that the new bill might actually end up breaking international law. The third point is about processing migrants out of the UK, and this is contentious too, but more for moral reasons than on legal grounds. Some just object to this idea, suggesting that it's extreme and nasty to send asylum seekers outside of the UK while being processed. Moral judgments aside, this is something that other countries have done. The problem is, where would they be sent? Some people have suggested British overseas territories, but that's sure to be contentious too. What about sending them to another country altogether? Well, Brexit has ironically put an end to that. Prior to the UK's departure from the EU, Britain was signed on to the Dublin regulations, which allowed the UK to send migrants back to the EU nations they'd passed through. However, since leaving, the UK has also withdrawn from this agreement, preventing them from returning migrants to EU nations. This means that Patel's Home Office haven't been able to send back a single migrant categorised as inadmissible since Brexit. So while it gave Britain more control over its borders, Brexit also took away some such powers. The government has insisted that the Dublin regulations weren't fit for purpose anyway, and has promised new deals with countries, but none have materialised thus far, leaving the UK kind of stuck. The Conservatives likely hope that these new approaches will limit the flow of migrants coming to the UK and grant them additional controls. However, the bill has only been proposed at this stage and will head to parliamentary scrutiny later this year, so there's still a way to go, especially when you consider that refugee charities have already described it as extreme and nasty, remarking that bills like this have no place in a country that seeks to defend human rights and the rule of law, with Labour also saying that the bill could actually reduce support for human trafficking victims and break international law. Ultimately then, we'll have to keep an eye on Parliament to see whether this bill actually ever makes it into law. As I said at the start, videos like this are made possible by our Patreon backers. In return for their support, they get a whole variety of perks, from early access to videos, exclusive live events, merch discounts, and more. Find out what you can get and sign up by clicking the link in the description.